Maya Chen never imagined that her beaten-up 2010 Honda Civic would become the catalyst for the most dramatic family confrontation of her life. What started as casual mockery from her wealthy aunt about her embarrassing little car would soon expose secrets that would leave her entire family questioning everything they thought they knew about success, appearances, and the quiet young woman they had always underestimated. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Chen had grown accustomed to being the family disappointment, though she had never quite understood why. At 28, she worked as a freelance graphic designer from her modest apartment in Portland's Hawthorne district, drove a car that had seen better days, and lived what most of her relatives considered an unremarkable life. Her extended family, particularly her Aunt Victoria, had made their opinions about her choices abundantly clear over the years. Victoria Chen Morrison had married into money 25 years ago and had never let anyone forget it. She lived in a sprawling Tudor-style mansion in West Hills, drove a gleaming white BMW X7, and treated family gatherings like opportunities to showcase her elevated status. Maya's mother, Linda, was Victoria's younger sister, and the dynamic between them had always been complicated by unspoken competition and dramatically different life paths. The Honda Civic that would eventually change everything had been Maya's companion for 8 years. She had bought it used from an elderly neighbor who could no longer drive, paying cash for the modest vehicle that already had over 100,000 miles on its odometer. The silver paint had faded to an almost gray hue, the fabric seats bore witness to countless coffee spills and creative projects, and the passenger side mirror had been held in place with duct tape ever since a minor parking lot incident 3 years prior. Maya's family never understood why she didn't upgrade. Her parents, both hardworking middle-class professionals, had always encouraged practicality, but even they sometimes hinted that perhaps it was time for something newer, something that wouldn't require quite so many trips to the mechanic. Her younger sister Emma, a pharmaceutical sales representative, drove a leased Lexus and frequently offered to help Maya find a good deal on something more presentable. Victoria, however, was never subtle about her disapproval. During family barbecues at Maya's parents' suburban home, she would park her BMW prominently in the driveway while Maya discreetly tucked her Honda along the street, hoping to avoid the inevitable comments. Victoria's husband, Robert, a successful real estate developer, would occasionally offer Maya unsolicited advice about building credit through car financing, clearly assuming her transportation choices reflected financial limitations rather than personal preference. The roots of their family dynamic stretched back to Maya's childhood in the Rose City neighborhood, where she and Emma had grown up. Their father, David, worked as an electrical engineer for a local utility company, while their mother, Linda, taught at Roosevelt High School. They had provided a stable, loving environment, but money was always carefully managed and luxuries were rare. Maya learned early to appreciate what she had rather than longing for what she lacked. Victoria's transformation from Maya's middle-class aunt to wealthy socialite had happened gradually after her marriage to Robert. Initially, the family had been happy for Victoria's good fortune, but over time, her newfound wealth began to create distance. She started hosting family events at exclusive restaurants rather than casual home gatherings, gave expensive gifts that somehow made the recipients feel inadequate rather than grateful, and developed a habit of offering unsolicited advice about lifestyle upgrades that everyone else should consider. Maya had always been different from the rest of her family in ways that extended far beyond her transportation choices. While Emma was outgoing and ambitious in conventional ways, Maya was introspective and creative. She had shown artistic talent from an early age, spending hours drawing elaborate fantasy worlds and designing intricate patterns that caught adults' attention. Her parents had encouraged her creativity while also worrying about practical career prospects in the arts. During high school, Maya discovered graphic design and found her calling in the intersection of art and technology. She was one of only 3 students in her graduating class to receive a full scholarship to Portland State University, where she studied digital media and business. Her professors recognized her exceptional talent for visual communication and her intuitive understanding of brand psychology, but Maya preferred working independently rather than seeking positions at large agencies. After graduation, Maya had briefly worked for a prestigious design firm downtown, creating marketing materials for corporate clients and learning the business side of creative work. The experience taught her valuable lessons about client relations, project management, and pricing strategies, but she quickly realized that the corporate environment stifled her creativity and limited her potential for growth. Against her family's advice, she left the stable position to pursue freelance work. Victoria had been particularly vocal about Maya's decision to leave what she called a perfectly good job with benefits to pursue what she saw as an unstable career path. During the family dinner where Maya announced her transition to freelance work, Victoria had launched into a lecture about financial security and professional advancement that left Maya feeling small and foolish, even though she was confident in her decision. The pattern of family gatherings became predictable over the years. Victoria would arrive fashionably late, always perfectly dressed, and frequently bearing expensive wine or elaborate desserts from high-end bakeries. She would survey the modest suburban home with thinly veiled condescension, making comments about outdated appliances or suggesting renovations that would really open up the space. Maya's parents tolerated these observations with good humor, but Maya noticed how her mother's smile sometimes became strained during Victoria's visits. Maya's work choices continued to mystify her family as the years passed. While her freelance business was actually thriving, she rarely discussed the details of her projects or clients. She preferred to keep her professional life private, partly because explaining the complexities of brand strategy and digital marketing to relatives who weren't in creative fields often led to misunderstandings. When family members asked about her work, she would offer vague responses about helping small businesses with their marketing materials, which reinforced their impression that she was struggling to build a sustainable career. The misconceptions about Maya's financial situation were compounded by her deliberately modest lifestyle.
She lived in a small but charming one-bedroom apartment that she had furnished with thrift store finds and pieces she had restored herself. Her wardrobe consisted primarily of comfortable, practical clothing that could transition from client meetings to creative work sessions. She rarely participated in family discussions about expensive vacations or luxury purchases, preferring to listen rather than contribute to conversations about material acquisitions. Emma's career trajectory provided a stark contrast that Victoria frequently highlighted. After graduating from Oregon State University with a business degree, Emma had immediately landed a position with a major pharmaceutical company. Her income grew steadily, allowing her to rent a trendy apartment in the Pearl District and maintain the kind of lifestyle that Victoria approved of. Emma bought new clothes regularly, traveled frequently for both work and pleasure, and generally embodied the kind of success that was easy for the family to understand and celebrate. Maya's relationship with Emma remained close despite their different approaches to life. Emma genuinely worried about her older sister's financial future and often tried to help in ways that Maya appreciated even when they weren't necessary. She would invite Maya to expensive restaurants and insist on paying, or bring designer clothes she claimed she had worn only once and was ready to pass along. Maya accepted these gestures gracefully, understanding they came from love rather than pity, though she sometimes wished Emma understood that her choices were strategic rather than circumstantial. The generational differences in Maya's family also influenced their perspectives on success and financial security. Her parents had lived through economic uncertainty and valued stability above risk-taking. They had worked steadily for decades, saved diligently for retirement, and measured success by conventional metrics like homeownership, steady employment, and gradually increasing income. Maya's decision to pursue entrepreneurial freelance work represented a level of risk that made them nervous, even though they supported her creativity and independence. Victoria's approach to wealth and status reflected her own insecurities about social acceptance and her determination to distance herself from her middle-class origins. Having grown up in the same modest circumstances as Linda, Victoria's elevation to upper-class society had required her to learn new social codes and adopt new values. Her criticism of Maya's choices often seemed rooted in her own fears about falling back into the economic class she had worked so hard to escape. Maya's apartment in the Hawthorne district reflected her personal aesthetic and values in ways that her family didn't fully appreciate. The neighborhood was known for its artistic community, independent businesses, and walkable urban environment. Maya had chosen the location specifically because it allowed her to bike to most of her destinations, reduced her environmental footprint, and surrounded her with like-minded creative professionals. The apartment itself was small but thoughtfully arranged, with a dedicated workspace where she created designs for clients across the country. Her daily routine rarely aligned with traditional business hours, which added to her family's perception that her career lacked structure and stability. Maya often worked late into the night when inspiration struck, then spent mornings hiking in Forest Park or exploring Portland's farmers markets for inspiration. Her flexible schedule allowed her to pursue personal projects and volunteer work that were meaningful to her, but didn't translate into obvious financial success in her family's eyes. The creative work that filled Maya's days was both intellectually challenging and emotionally fulfilling in ways that her family struggled to understand. She specialized in helping small businesses and nonprofit organizations develop visual identities that authentically represented their values and connected with their target audiences. Her portfolio included work for organic farms, environmental advocacy groups, independent bookstores, and innovative tech startups that were developing solutions for social problems. Maya's approach to client relationships was built on deep collaboration and strategic thinking, rather than simply executing design requests. She spent considerable time researching her clients' industries, understanding their competitive landscapes, and developing comprehensive brand strategies that extended far beyond logo design. This methodology allowed her to charge premium rates for her services, but the complexity of her work was difficult to explain to family members who associated graphic design with simple tasks like creating flyers or business cards. The financial aspects of Maya's business remained largely invisible to her family because she had structured her work to prioritize long-term value creation over short-term income maximization. Rather than taking on every project that came her way, she carefully selected clients whose missions aligned with her values and who were committed to building meaningful brands. This approach sometimes meant turning down lucrative opportunities that didn't interest her, a decision that would have horrified Victoria if she had known about it. Maya's relationship with money had been shaped by her parents' practical approach to financial management and her own observations about the relationship between wealth and happiness. She had watched Victoria's marriage evolve over the years, noting how financial abundance had brought certain advantages, but had also created new pressures and anxieties. Victoria's constant concern with maintaining appearances and her need to justify her lifestyle choices through criticism of others suggested to Maya that wealth alone wasn't sufficient for genuine contentment. The Honda Civic that became such a source of family tension represented many of Maya's core values in tangible form. The car was reliable, efficient, and unassuming. It required minimal maintenance costs, had no monthly payments, and allowed Maya to navigate the city without worrying about theft, vandalism, or expensive repairs. More importantly, driving a modest vehicle helped her maintain connections with clients and community members who might have felt uncomfortable if she had displayed obvious wealth. Maya's environmental consciousness also influenced her transportation choices in ways that her family didn't fully appreciate. She had calculated the carbon footprint of manufacturing a new vehicle versus maintaining her existing car and concluded that keeping the Honda was the more environmentally responsible choice. She supplemented her driving with biking and public transportation whenever possible, viewing cars as tools for specific purposes rather than status symbols or expressions of personal identity. The frequency of family gatherings increased during holiday seasons, creating more opportunities for tension around Maya's lifestyle choices. Victoria had established herself as the unofficial organizer of extended family events, often selecting venues and activities that showcased her social connections and financial resources.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya typically attended these gatherings out of loyalty to her parents and genuine affection for her relatives, but she increasingly felt like an outsider in conversations that revolved around luxury purchases, expensive vacations, and competitive displays of affluence. Christmas celebrations at Victoria's mansion had become particularly challenging for Maya. The house was always decorated with professional flair, featuring elaborate themes that changed annually and required extensive coordination with florists, caterers, and party planners. Guests were expected to dress formally and bring appropriately expensive gifts that would reflect well on the family's overall prosperity. Maya's handmade presents and modest attire stood out awkwardly in this environment, leading to increasingly pointed comments from Victoria about making an effort for special occasions. Maya's dating life provided another source of family concern and unwanted advice. She had been in a long-term relationship with Jake, an environmental scientist who shared her values about sustainable living and social responsibility. Jake drove a hybrid vehicle that was even older than Maya's Honda and lived in a cooperative housing arrangement that allowed him to minimize his environmental impact while saving money for his research work. Victoria had met Jake only once, during a brief encounter at a family barbecue, but she had immediately dismissed him as unsuitable based on his appearance and transportation choices. The conversations between Linda and Victoria about Maya's relationship often took place within Maya's hearing, creating uncomfortable situations where she was simultaneously present and treated as absent. Victoria would express concern about Maya settling for someone who couldn't provide the kind of lifestyle she deserved, while Linda would defend Jake's character and intelligence. These discussions revealed the different ways the sisters understood success and compatibility, with Victoria prioritizing financial potential and social status, while Linda valued personal qualities and shared interests. Maya's professional network consisted primarily of other creative professionals, small business owners, and social entrepreneurs who had chosen alternative paths to traditional career success. These relationships provided her with emotional support, intellectual stimulation, and business opportunities that her family didn't recognize as valuable. Her friends appreciated her design expertise, her thoughtful approach to problem solving, and her commitment to using her skills for positive social impact. In this community, Maya's modest lifestyle was seen as evidence of her authentic commitment to her values rather than a sign of limited ambition or capability. The contrast between Maya's professional community and her family environment created a kind of double life that became increasingly difficult to maintain. At client meetings and industry events, Maya was recognized as a talented professional who commanded respect for her strategic thinking and creative vision. Her reputation had spread through word-of-mouth referrals, leading to opportunities with increasingly prominent organizations that valued her unique approach to brand development. However, when she returned to family gatherings, she became the underachieving relative whose lifestyle choices were seen as evidence of poor judgment or limited prospects. Maya's living situation reflected her priorities in ways that her family consistently misinterpreted. Her apartment was small by choice rather than necessity, allowing her to minimize her environmental footprint while maximizing her financial flexibility. She had arranged the space to support both her creative work and her personal interests, with areas dedicated to design projects, reading, and practicing yoga. The lack of expensive furniture or elaborate decorations was intentional, reflecting her preference for functionality and simplicity over conspicuous consumption. The neighborhood where Maya had chosen to live embodied many of the values that guided her life choices. Hawthorne District was known for its commitment to local businesses, environmental sustainability, and artistic expression. Maya could walk to independent coffee shops, used bookstores, and vintage clothing stores that aligned with her preferences for supporting small businesses and reducing waste. The community garden where she volunteered on weekends provided fresh produce and connections with neighbors who shared her interest in sustainable living practices. Maya's volunteer work remained largely invisible to her family because she rarely discussed these activities during family gatherings. She spent several hours each week teaching design skills to teenagers at a local community center, helping them develop visual portfolios for college applications and job searches. She also provided pro bono design services to environmental organizations and social justice groups that couldn't afford professional marketing materials. These contributions were deeply meaningful to Maya and enhanced her professional reputation within her chosen community, but they didn't translate into the kind of visible success that her family could easily recognize or celebrate.
The financial strategies that Maya employed were sophisticated, but deliberately concealed from family scrutiny. She had learned about investment principles during college and had been systematically building wealth through careful planning and disciplined saving. Rather than spending her income on visible luxuries, she had been directing surplus funds toward investments that would provide long-term security and freedom. Her financial planning was based on goals like early retirement, travel opportunities, and the ability to be selective about client projects rather than the accumulation of status symbols. Maya's approach to financial planning had been influenced by her observations of Victoria's lifestyle and her own research into wealth-building strategies. She had concluded that true financial security came from building assets rather than maintaining expensive lifestyles that required constant income to sustain. This perspective led her to prioritize investments over consumption, even when it meant accepting family criticism about her modest standard of living. The creative projects that brought Maya the most satisfaction often generated the least obvious financial returns, creating another layer of misunderstanding about her professional priorities. She had spent months developing a visual identity for a nonprofit organization that was working to provide clean water access in rural communities. The project required extensive research, multiple design iterations, and coordination with field workers in remote locations, but the organization could only afford a modest fee. Maya had accepted the project because she believed in the mission and wanted to contribute her skills to meaningful work. But her family would have seen this as evidence of poor business judgment. Maya's expertise in digital marketing had evolved significantly since her college graduation, keeping pace with rapid changes in technology and consumer behavior. She had become proficient in social media strategy, search engine optimization, and data analytics that allowed her to measure the effectiveness of her design work. These technical skills complemented her artistic abilities and enabled her to provide comprehensive marketing solutions for her clients.
However, explaining these competencies to family members often resulted in glazed expressions and polite nods that suggested they didn't understand the complexity or value of her work. The seasonal rhythms of Maya's business created income fluctuations that her family interpreted as instability rather than strategic planning. She typically experienced busy periods during the fall when organizations prepared for annual campaigns and spring when businesses launched new initiatives. During slower periods, she focused on personal projects, professional development, and volunteer work. This pattern allowed her to maintain work-life balance and avoid burnout, but it reinforced her family's perception that freelance work was inherently unreliable. Maya's relationship with technology reflected her generation's comfort with digital tools and platforms, but also her deliberate choices about how to integrate these resources into her life. She used advanced design software, project management systems, and communication platforms to serve clients efficiently and professionally. However, she avoided some social media platforms that encouraged lifestyle comparisons and chose not to share details about her work or personal life online. This digital restraint contributed to her family's limited understanding of her professional accomplishments and business relationships. The educational investments that Maya had made in her professional development were substantial, but largely invisible to her family. She regularly attended design conferences, completed online courses in emerging technologies, and participated in workshops that enhanced her strategic thinking and creative problem-solving abilities. These investments in her human capital were significant expenses that reduced her available income for lifestyle upgrades, but they positioned her for long-term career growth and increased earning potential. Maya's understanding of branding extended beyond her professional work to influence her personal choices about self-presentation and lifestyle. She had consciously developed a personal brand that emphasized authenticity, creativity, and social responsibility, rather than financial success or material accumulation. This approach attracted clients who shared her values and appreciated her genuine commitment to meaningful work. But it also reinforced her family's misperceptions about her professional capabilities and financial prospects. The health insurance and retirement planning that Maya had arranged for herself demonstrated financial sophistication that her family didn't recognize.
As a freelance professional, she had researched and purchased comprehensive health coverage, established multiple retirement accounts, and created emergency funds that provided security during unpredictable income periods. These financial structures were more complex and expensive than employer-provided benefits, but they offered flexibility and control that Maya valued more than traditional employment security. Maya's travel experiences had been shaped by her values and budget priorities rather than luxury preferences. She had backpacked through several countries, stayed in hostels and cooperative housing arrangements, and focused on cultural immersion rather than resort experiences. These trips had been meaningful and affordable, providing inspiration for her creative work and perspectives that enhanced her effectiveness with clients from diverse backgrounds. However, her family interpreted her travel style as evidence of financial limitations rather than conscious choices about how to spend her money meaningfully. The books, online courses, and professional resources that filled Maya's apartment represented significant investments in her intellectual development and professional capabilities. She had built an extensive library of design theory, business strategy, and cultural analysis that informed her client work and personal projects. These resources were expensive and required ongoing financial commitment, but they weren't visible to family members who focused on more obvious indicators of financial success like clothing, cars, and housing. Maya's approach to gift-giving during holidays and special occasions reflected her values about consumption and her skills as a creative professional. She typically created personalized, handmade presents that required significant time investment but modest financial expenditure. These gifts were often more meaningful and useful than expensive purchased items, but they reinforced her family's perception that she couldn't afford to buy appropriate presents. The time and creative energy Maya invested in these projects was substantial, but it wasn't valued in the same way as monetary expenditure. The culmination of years of assumptions, misunderstandings, and subtle criticisms was approaching a breaking point that none of Maya's family members could have anticipated. Her Honda Civic continued to serve as a symbol of everything they misunderstood about her choices, priorities, and capabilities. The car had become more than transportation. It was a daily reminder of the gulf between Maya's authentic life and her family's perceptions of who she was supposed to be. Victoria's increasingly pointed comments about Maya's lifestyle choices had begun to affect the broader family dynamic. Linda found herself defensive about her daughter's decisions while also worried about Maya's future prospects. David struggled to understand why Maya didn't pursue more conventional markers of success when she was clearly intelligent and capable. Emma felt caught between loyalty to her sister and recognition that their aunt's concerns weren't entirely unreasonable. The stage was set for a confrontation that would force Maya to choose between continued family harmony and honest representation of her accomplishments and values. Her secret financial success and the sophisticated investment strategies she had been implementing were about to become relevant in ways she had never expected. The modest Honda Civic that had endured years of family criticism was about to play a central role in revealing truths that would transform not only how her family saw her, but how they understood success, authenticity, and the complex relationships between appearance and reality. Maya had no idea that within weeks, her Aunt Victoria would find herself in desperate need of exactly the kind of help that Maya's supposedly inadequate car could provide. The revelation that would follow would expose not only Maya's hidden financial sophistication, but also the assumptions and insecurities that had shaped her family's treatment of her for years. The quiet graphic designer who had been underestimated and patronized was about to demonstrate that sometimes the most powerful statements are made not through what you display, but what you choose to keep private. The call came on a Thursday morning in October, interrupting Maya's concentrated work on a rebranding project for a sustainable fashion startup. She almost didn't answer when she saw Victoria's name on her phone screen, knowing that her aunt rarely contacted her directly unless there was family drama or some crisis that required coordination through the younger generation. Maya was deep in the creative zone, experimenting with color palettes that would convey both environmental consciousness and premium quality for her client's new product line. Victoria's voice sounded strained and uncharacteristically uncertain when Maya finally picked up the call.
There was none of the usual authoritative tone that marked her aunt's typical communications. No immediate launch into whatever agenda had prompted the contact. Instead, Victoria seemed to be struggling with how to begin the conversation, a hesitancy that immediately put Maya on alert because her aunt was normally supremely confident in all her interactions. The story that emerged was both surprising and revealing in ways that Victoria probably didn't intend. Robert had been hospitalized the previous evening with what doctors suspected was a mild heart attack, though they were still conducting tests to determine the exact nature of his cardiac episode. Victoria had spent the night at the hospital, leaving her BMW in the parking garage where it had remained overnight. When she finally returned to retrieve the vehicle that morning, she discovered that it wouldn't start. Apparently the victim of a dead battery that had been gradually weakening over recent weeks. What made the situation particularly challenging for Victoria was that Robert's hospitalization had occurred during a week when their usual support systems were unavailable. Their regular mechanic was attending a family wedding in California, their neighbor, who sometimes helped with such emergencies, was traveling in Europe, and even their housekeeper, who occasionally ran errands, was dealing with her own family crisis. Victoria found herself in the unfamiliar position of needing assistance from someone who didn't typically rely on her wealth or social connections. Maya listened to her aunt's explanation with growing surprise, not just at the practical crisis, but at Victoria's obvious discomfort with having to ask for help. The woman who had spent years offering unsolicited advice about lifestyle improvements and financial planning was struggling to admit that she needed something as basic as a ride. The irony wasn't lost on Maya that her supposedly inadequate transportation was being called upon to rescue someone who had repeatedly criticized its existence. The hospital where Robert was staying was located in southwest Portland, about 30 minutes from Maya's apartment, under normal traffic conditions. Victoria needed to return with clean clothes for her husband, important documents from their home safe, and Robert's medication that he would need during what might be an extended stay. She also wanted to bring his laptop and some business files, since he was anxious about several real estate transactions that required his attention, even from his hospital bed. Maya found herself in an unexpectedly powerful position as Victoria explained her various transportation options and their limitations. Taking a rideshare service would be expensive for multiple trips and wouldn't provide the flexibility Victoria needed to transport all of Robert's belongings. Taxi services in their suburban area were unreliable and would require long waits between rides. Public transportation would involve multiple transfers and would be impractical given the volume of items Victoria needed to move. The request, when Victoria finally managed to articulate it clearly, was both simple and complicated. She needed Maya to drive her home to collect Robert's necessities, then back to the hospital, and potentially to provide additional transportation over the next few days while Robert recovered and their car situation was resolved. What made the request particularly difficult for Victoria was that it forced her to acknowledge the practical value of exactly the kind of modest, reliable transportation she had been mocking for years. Maya's initial response was automatic agreement to help, driven by genuine concern for Robert's health and family loyalty that transcended their recent tensions. She told Victoria she could be at the hospital within 45 minutes, allowing time to finish saving her current design work and gather items she might need for what could be a long day. However, as she prepared to leave her apartment, Maya found herself reconsidering the dynamic that had led to this moment and the opportunity it might represent. The drive to the hospital gave Maya time to reflect on the complex emotions Victoria's call had triggered. There was satisfaction in being needed by someone who had consistently undervalued her contributions, but also genuine sympathy for her aunt's distress and worry about Robert's condition. Maya had always liked Robert, despite his sometimes condescending financial advice, appreciating his dry humor and his obvious devotion to Victoria. The idea that he might be seriously ill was concerning, regardless of family politics.
Maya arrived at the hospital to find Victoria pacing in the main lobby, her usually immaculate appearance showing signs of the stress she had been under. Her designer outfit was wrinkled from spending the night in uncomfortable waiting room chairs, her makeup had been hastily reapplied without her usual precision, and her typical air of complete control was notably absent. When she saw Maya approaching, Victoria's relief was visible, even though she tried to maintain her characteristic composure. The reunion between aunt and niece was awkward, marked by Victoria's obvious discomfort with needing help and Maya's uncertainty about how to navigate this reversal of their usual power dynamic. Victoria thanked Maya for coming with stiff formality, then immediately began explaining the urgent nature of various errands that needed to be accomplished, as if maintaining control over the logistics could restore her sense of authority in the situation. As they walked toward the parking garage where Maya had left her Honda, Victoria's commentary resumed its familiar pattern despite the changed circumstances. She mentioned that Maya really should consider getting the dent in her passenger door fixed, suggested that the faded paint made the car look older than it actually was, and wondered aloud whether Maya had considered how the vehicle's appearance might affect her professional reputation. Even in her moment of dependence, Victoria couldn't resist offering unsolicited advice about automotive improvements. Maya's response to these comments was more measured than usual, influenced by her recognition that Victoria's criticism might be a way of coping with her anxiety about Robert's condition. Rather than engaging in defensive explanations about her transportation choices, Maya simply acknowledged her aunt's suggestions with neutral responses that neither agreed nor disagreed with the assessments. This approach seemed to surprise Victoria, who was accustomed to either defensive reactions or silent acceptance from Maya. The drive to Victoria's mansion provided Maya with her first extended opportunity to observe her aunt in a genuinely vulnerable state. Victoria's usual conversation style involved controlled monologues about her social activities, Robert's business successes, and various improvements they were making to their property or lifestyle. Today, however, her conversation was fragmented and anxious, jumping between concerns about Robert's treatment, worry about business obligations he might miss, and frustration with the practical inconveniences created by their car trouble. Maya began to understand that Victoria's lifestyle, while luxurious, was also remarkably dependent on systems and services that could be disrupted by unexpected events. The wealth that provided comfort and convenience also created expectations and obligations that became problematic when normal support structures weren't available.
The mansion in West Hills looked even more imposing than usual as Maya pulled into the circular driveway, her Honda appearing almost comically modest against the backdrop of manicured landscaping and architectural grandeur. Victoria's discomfort with the visual contrast was obvious as she quickly directed Maya to park near the service entrance rather than the main entry, presumably to minimize the aesthetic disruption of the modest vehicle's presence on the elegant property. Inside the house, Maya was struck by how the opulent surroundings seemed to overwhelm rather than comfort Victoria in her current state of distress. The formal living spaces that were designed for entertaining and display felt cold and impractical when what Victoria needed was simple efficiency in gathering necessary items. Maya found herself helping her aunt navigate through rooms filled with expensive furniture and decorative objects to locate practical necessities like comfortable clothes and basic toiletries. Victoria's bedroom revealed aspects of her personality that Maya had never previously observed. Despite the room's elegant design and luxurious appointments, Victoria seemed uncertain about what clothes would be appropriate for extended hospital visits. Her wardrobe consisted primarily of expensive outfits designed for social events, business meetings, and carefully orchestrated public appearances. The practical clothing suitable for sleeping in waiting rooms and dealing with medical emergencies was notably absent from her extensive collection. Maya found herself offering practical advice about hospital visits, drawing on her own experiences with family medical situations and her general comfort with adapting to unexpected circumstances. She suggested comfortable shoes for long periods of standing and walking, layers that could be adjusted for varying hospital temperatures, and casual clothes that wouldn't require careful maintenance during stressful periods.
Victoria listened to these recommendations with obvious appreciation, though Maya could sense her aunt's discomfort with receiving lifestyle advice rather than dispensing it. The process of gathering Robert's necessities provided Maya with insights into the complexity of Victoria and Robert's business affairs. The documents Victoria needed to collect included contracts for multiple real estate developments, financial statements for various investment partnerships, and correspondence with attorneys and accountants about ongoing transactions. Maya began to understand that Robert's work involved significant financial obligations and time-sensitive decisions that couldn't be easily postponed during his hospitalization. Victoria's anxiety about these business matters was clearly compounding her worry about Robert's health. She explained that several major deals were approaching critical deadlines, requiring Robert's personal attention and decision-making authority that couldn't be easily delegated to associates. The financial implications of delayed transactions were substantial, potentially affecting not only their personal wealth, but also the investments of numerous business partners and clients. As Maya helped Victoria organize documents and pack bags, she found herself offering organizational suggestions that seemed to surprise her aunt. Maya's experience managing complex client projects had developed her skills in prioritizing tasks, creating efficient systems, and maintaining calm focus during stressful situations. These capabilities, which Victoria had never previously recognized or valued, proved genuinely helpful in managing the current crisis. The return trip to the hospital provided an opportunity for more substantive conversation between Maya and Victoria than they had shared in years. Victoria's defenses were lowered by her worry and exhaustion, allowing her to express genuine emotions rather than maintaining her usual composed facade. She talked about her fears regarding Robert's health, her feeling of helplessness in dealing with medical situations she couldn't control, and her recognition that their lifestyle had left them somewhat isolated from family support systems. Maya listened with growing sympathy for her aunt's situation, while also recognizing that Victoria's current vulnerability might create an opportunity for more honest communication between them. The power dynamic that had characterized their relationship was temporarily suspended, allowing Maya to respond as an equal rather than as the family member who was perpetually in need of improvement and guidance. Victoria's comments about the Honda during this drive were notably different from her usual criticisms. She mentioned that the car was more comfortable than she had expected, that Maya obviously maintained it well despite its age, and that it was reassuring to have reliable transportation during such a stressful time. These observations seemed to surprise Victoria herself, as if she was recognizing positive qualities in something she had previously dismissed entirely. Maya decided that this shift in Victoria's perspective might provide an opening for more honesty about her own life and choices. She began sharing information about her work that she had previously kept private, explaining some of the complex projects she had recently completed and the strategic thinking they required. Victoria's responses indicated genuine surprise at the sophistication of Maya's professional activities and the level of responsibility her work involved. The conversation evolved into broader topics about life choices, success, and happiness as they navigated Portland traffic toward the hospital. Victoria admitted that her constant focus on appearance and status sometimes felt exhausting, particularly during crises when such concerns seemed trivial compared to health and family relationships. Maya shared her perspective about choosing fulfillment over conventional markers of success, explaining how her modest lifestyle provided freedom and authenticity that she valued more than material luxury. By the time they reached the hospital, both women seemed to recognize that the relationship had shifted in significant ways during the morning's events. Victoria's crisis had created space for genuine connection that had been impossible when their interactions were filtered through assumptions and pretenses. Maya felt more seen and understood by her aunt than she had in years, while Victoria seemed to appreciate qualities in her niece that she had previously overlooked or undervalued. The afternoon at the hospital provided additional opportunities for Maya to demonstrate capabilities that Victoria had never previously recognized. Maya proved adept at navigating the complex hospital bureaucracy, communicating effectively with medical staff, and providing emotional support during a frightening and uncertain situation. Her calm competence contrasted favorably with Victoria's tendency toward anxiety and attempts to control situations through wealth or social connections. Robert's conditions stabilized during the day, with doctors determining that he had experienced a mild cardiac episode that could be managed with medication and lifestyle modifications rather than requiring immediate surgical intervention. The relief this news provided allowed Victoria to relax somewhat and pay more attention to the dynamics of her interaction with Maya. She began to notice and comment on Maya's effectiveness in handling various aspects of the crisis situation. As evening approached, Victoria faced the prospect of spending another night at the hospital, while continuing to rely on Maya's transportation for accessing their home and managing necessary errands. The arrangement that had begun as a temporary emergency measure was becoming an extended dependency that forced Victoria to confront her assumptions about Maya's reliability and competence.
Maya's cheerful willingness to provide ongoing assistance without seeking recognition or repayment seemed to surprise Victoria and challenge her understanding of family dynamics. The conversation during their evening drive back to Victoria's house revealed more about both women's perspectives on family relationships and personal values. Victoria acknowledged that her criticism of Maya's choices had been based on limited understanding of Maya's actual situation and priorities. She admitted that her own success anxiety had led her to project her insecurities onto other family members, particularly those who seemed comfortable with alternative approaches to life and career. Maya recognized that Victoria's criticism had often reflected genuine concern for Maya's welfare, even when it was expressed in unhelpful ways. She began to understand that Victoria's emphasis on appearance and status might have been her way of trying to protect family members from the kinds of social and economic challenges she had experienced during her own young adulthood. This realization allowed Maya to respond to her aunt's perspective with more empathy and less defensiveness. The evening spent at Victoria's house while she gathered additional items for Robert's extended hospital stay provided Maya with new insights into her aunt's daily life and priorities. The house that had always seemed like a showcase for wealth and status revealed more personal aspects when viewed through the lens of Victoria's current vulnerability. Family photographs, personal mementos, and evidence of genuine affection between Victoria and Robert humanized the space in ways that Maya had never previously noticed. Victoria's gratitude for Maya's assistance was becoming more genuine and less begrudging as the day progressed. She began expressing appreciation not just for the transportation Maya was providing, but for her niece's calm presence during a crisis and her practical contributions to managing complex logistics. These acknowledgments represented a significant shift in Victoria's perception of Maya's value and capabilities. As they prepared for what might be several more days of hospital visits and family crisis management, Victoria made an observation that surprised both of them. She noted that Maya's modest lifestyle and practical approach to problem-solving had proven more valuable during this emergency than any of the luxury resources Victoria usually relied upon. The expensive car that couldn't start, the social connections who weren't available, and the service providers who were temporarily inaccessible had left Victoria dependent on exactly the kind of simple reliability she had been criticizing for years. Maya found herself in the unexpected position of having her life choices validated by the family member who had been most critical of them. Victoria's acknowledgement that practicality and dependability had advantages over luxury and status was particularly meaningful because it represented a fundamental shift in how her aunt understood success and value. The crisis had created circumstances where Maya's priorities proved superior to Victoria's approach, forcing a reevaluation of assumptions that had shaped their relationship for years. The day's events had also provided Maya with new perspective on Victoria's motivations and insecurities. She began to understand that her aunt's emphasis on wealth and status might have been driven by deeper fears about security and acceptance rather than simple materialism or vanity. Victoria's vulnerability during Robert's health crisis revealed a person who was genuinely caring and devoted, but who had perhaps lost touch with more fundamental sources of strength and resilience.
As Maya prepared to drive home that evening, leaving Victoria at the hospital with Robert, who was stable but still under medical observation, both women recognized that their relationship had been fundamentally altered by the day's experiences. The emergency that had forced Victoria to seek help from her supposedly unsuccessful niece had revealed strengths and qualities that challenged long-held assumptions about success, family dynamics, and personal worth. Victoria's parting comments included not only gratitude for Maya's assistance, but genuine expressions of respect for her niece's competence and character. She acknowledged that she had misjudged Maya's situation and capabilities, admitting that her criticism had been based on superficial observations rather than real understanding of Maya's choices and values. These admissions represented significant personal growth for someone who rarely acknowledged being wrong about anything. Maya drove home through Portland's evening traffic with a complex mix of emotions about the day's revelations and relationship shifts. She felt satisfaction at having her worth recognized by someone whose approval she had unconsciously sought despite their philosophical differences. More importantly, she felt genuine affection and respect for Victoria that had been obscured by years of tension and misunderstanding. The crisis had revealed positive qualities in her aunt that had been hidden behind defensive behavior and social pretensions. The events of the day had also forced Maya to reconsider her own approach to family relationships and her tendency to keep aspects of her life private rather than seeking understanding or recognition. She began to wonder whether her strategy of flying under the radar had contributed to family misunderstandings and whether more openness about her professional success and financial situation might improve relationships without compromising her values. As she reflected on Victoria's surprise at discovering Maya's competence and reliability, Maya realized that her family's underestimation of her capabilities might have been partially her own fault. By consistently deflecting attention and avoiding discussions about her professional success, she had allowed misconceptions to persist and grow. The question now was whether maintaining privacy was worth the cost of continued misunderstanding and whether the day's breakthrough with Victoria might provide an opportunity for broader family honesty. The transformation in Victoria's attitude toward Maya's Honda Civic provided a perfect metaphor for the broader shifts in understanding that had occurred during the crisis. The car that had been a source of embarrassment and criticism for years had proven invaluable when luxury alternatives failed. Victoria's newfound appreciation for the vehicle's reliability and practicality represented a more fundamental recognition that different approaches to life might have different advantages depending on circumstances. Maya's phone buzzed with a text message from Victoria as she reached her apartment, thanking her again for the day's help and asking if she could provide transportation for another hospital visit the following morning. The request was phrased with more respect and gratitude than Victoria had shown in any previous interaction, indicating that the day's experiences had created lasting changes in their dynamic rather than temporary adjustments to unusual circumstances. As Maya settled into her modest apartment that evening, she found herself viewing her living space with new appreciation for the choices it represented. The simplicity and functionality that had sometimes felt defensive when contrasted with Victoria's luxury now seemed more clearly aligned with her authentic values and priorities. The day's events had validated her approach to life in ways that felt genuinely meaningful rather than merely self-justifying. The question that remained was whether Maya should use this opportunity to reveal more about her financial situation and professional success to Victoria and, potentially, to the broader family.
The power shift that had occurred during Robert's hospitalization might provide the foundation for more authentic family connections, but it also represented a risk that Maya needed to evaluate carefully. Maya realized that her decision about how much to reveal would need to balance her desire for authentic relationships with her appreciation for privacy and her concern about how family dynamics might change if the truth about her wealth and success became widely known. The day had proven that her modest lifestyle and practical approaches had value that her family could recognize and appreciate, but it remained to be seen whether they could accept the more complex reality of her choices and accomplishments.
The Honda Civic that had started the day as a symbol of Maya's supposed limitations had ended as evidence of her wisdom and practical intelligence. Victoria's transformation from critic to grateful dependent had revealed not only the value of Maya's choices, but also the possibility for family relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical assumptions about success and worth. The crisis that had initially seemed like an inconvenience had become an opportunity for understanding and connection that might reshape family dynamics for years to come. As Maya prepared for bed that evening, she knew that the following days would bring additional opportunities to demonstrate her capabilities and potentially to share more about her life with family members who were finally ready to see her as she actually was, rather than as they had assumed her to be. The breaking point that had seemed threatening that morning had become a breakthrough that offered hope for more authentic and supportive family relationships based on genuine understanding rather than superficial judgments. The morning of Maya's third day helping Victoria brought an unexpected complication that would force long-hidden truths into the open. Maya had arrived at the hospital early, bringing fresh coffee and homemade muffins for her aunt, who had spent another sleepless night in the uncomfortable visitors' chairs. Robert's condition had improved significantly, with doctors indicating he could be discharged within 48 hours. But Victoria remained anxious about catching up on business obligations that had accumulated during the crisis. Victoria's phone rang as they sat in the hospital cafeteria, and Maya could hear tension in her aunt's voice as she spoke with someone who was clearly delivering unwelcome news. The conversation involved terms like escrow deadlines, contract violations, and potential litigation, suggesting that Robert's absence from work was creating serious financial complications. When Victoria ended the call, her face was pale with worry that seemed to exceed her concern about Robert's health. The explanation that followed revealed the complexity of Robert's current business situation and the potential consequences of his hospitalization. Several major real estate transactions were approaching critical deadlines that could not be extended without significant financial penalties. Robert needed to personally review documents, sign contracts, and make strategic decisions that could not be delegated to associates or postponed until his recovery. The deals involved not only Robert's own investments, but also money from numerous partners and clients who were counting on timely completion. Victoria's distress was compounded by her realization that she lacked the technical knowledge to assist with these business matters effectively. While she understood the general nature of Robert's work, she had never been directly involved in the detailed financial analysis and legal documentation that required immediate attention. The couple's division of responsibilities had left Victoria focused on social and household management, while Robert handled all aspects of their business and investment activities. Maya listened to her aunt's explanation with growing understanding of the crisis that was developing. The time-sensitive nature of the business obligations, combined with Robert's medical restrictions and Victoria's lack of relevant expertise, was creating a perfect storm that threatened both their immediate financial situation and their long-term business relationships. Victoria's usual solutions involving money and social connections were inadequate for a problem that required specialized knowledge and immediate action. As Victoria described the various documents that needed review and the decisions that required Robert's attention, Maya recognized that many of the issues involved financial analysis and strategic planning concepts that were actually familiar to her. Her freelance business had required her to develop sophisticated understanding of contracts, investment evaluation, and business strategy that extended far beyond graphic design services. The financial planning that had enabled her to build substantial wealth had involved exactly the kinds of analysis that Robert's situation demanded. Maya found herself in an unexpected position where her hidden expertise could provide genuine value to her family during a serious crisis. The question was whether she was ready to reveal the extent of her business knowledge and financial sophistication to relatives who had consistently underestimated her capabilities. The risk of disclosure was significant, but the potential benefits to Robert and Victoria were substantial enough to override Maya's usual preference for privacy. The decision to offer assistance with Robert's business crisis required Maya to reveal information about her background and capabilities that she had carefully concealed for years. She began by mentioning that her freelance work had required her to develop familiarity with business contracts and financial planning that might be relevant to Robert's situation. Victoria's initial response was polite skepticism, clearly doubting that Maya's creative work could have provided exposure to serious business and financial concepts. Maya's explanation became more detailed as Victoria's questions revealed the specific nature of Robert's obligations and deadlines. She described her experience evaluating investment opportunities, analyzing market trends, and developing business strategies for clients who operated in various industries. Victoria's expression shifted from skepticism to surprise as Maya demonstrated knowledge of financial terminology and business concepts that suggested far more sophisticated expertise than anyone in the family had realized. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Maya offered to review Robert's pending transactions and provide analysis that might help Victoria understand the options and implications involved in various decisions. Victoria's desperate need for assistance overcame her surprise at Maya's apparent competence, and she agreed to bring the relevant documents to Maya's apartment that evening, where they could work without the distractions and interruptions of the hospital environment. Maya's apartment, which Victoria had never previously visited, provided the first concrete evidence that her assumptions about her niece's financial situation might be inaccurate. The space was larger and more sophisticated than Victoria had expected, featuring high-end technology equipment, extensive business and financial reference materials, and evidence of a professional operation that extended far beyond simple graphic design services. The home office setup suggested capabilities and income levels that contradicted Victoria's understanding of Maya's career and lifestyle. The financial documents that Victoria brought from Robert's office provided Maya with an opportunity to demonstrate analytical capabilities that completely transformed her aunt's perception of her professional competence. Maya's analysis of Robert's business situation identified several opportunities for managing the crisis that Victoria and Robert had not previously considered.
Her recommendations involved restructuring certain transactions to extend deadlines, renegotiating terms to reduce immediate financial exposure, and prioritizing deals based on risk assessment and profit potential. The strategic thinking Maya demonstrated was clearly professional-level expertise that went far beyond helpful suggestions from a concerned family member. Victoria's amazement at Maya's business acumen prompted increasingly direct questions about her niece's background and career development. Maya realized that providing adequate answers would require revealing information about her financial success and professional reputation that she had been concealing for years. The moment had arrived when continued privacy would mean allowing Robert's business crisis to worsen when she had the knowledge and resources to help resolve it effectively. The revelation began with Maya's explanation of her actual client base and the scope of work she performed for major organizations across multiple industries. Victoria learned that Maya's freelance business involved strategic consulting and comprehensive brand development for clients who paid substantial fees for expertise that combined creative vision with sophisticated business analysis. The graphic design work that the family had understood as Maya's primary activity was actually just one component of a much broader professional practice. Maya's description of her client relationships and project scope revealed a level of professional success that contradicted every assumption Victoria had made about her niece's career prospects and financial situation. The clients Maya served included major corporations, successful entrepreneurs, and well-funded nonprofit organizations who valued her strategic thinking and creative problem-solving abilities enough to pay premium rates for her services. Victoria's understanding of consulting fees and professional service pricing made Maya's income potential impossible to ignore or minimize. The financial aspects of Maya's success became explicit when she offered to provide temporary funding to help Robert manage the immediate cash flow requirements of his pending transactions. Victoria's shock at this offer prompted Maya to explain that her business success had enabled her to accumulate substantial savings and investment assets that provided both financial security and flexibility to help family members during emergencies. Maya's revelation of her actual net worth required her to show Victoria documentation that proved the extent of her financial success
and the sophisticated investment strategies she had been implementing for years. Victoria's review of Maya's portfolio statements and investment accounts revealed wealth that exceeded her most optimistic assumptions about her niece's potential and challenged fundamental beliefs about the relationship between lifestyle choices and financial capability. The investment portfolio that Maya shared with Victoria demonstrated not only substantial accumulated wealth, but also sophisticated financial planning that suggested deep understanding of market dynamics, risk management, and long-term wealth building strategies. Maya's allocation across various asset classes, her international diversification, and her strategic timing of investments revealed expertise that impressed Victoria despite her own family's significant financial resources and business experience. Victoria's questions about how Maya had achieved such remarkable financial success while maintaining such a modest lifestyle prompted explanations that revealed the strategic thinking behind choices that the family had interpreted as evidence of limited ambition or capability. Maya's decision to drive an older car, live in a modest apartment, and avoid conspicuous consumption were revealed as deliberate strategies for maximizing investment potential while maintaining privacy and authenticity rather than signs of financial constraint. The revelation that Maya's financial assets exceeded those of most family members, including Victoria and Robert, despite their luxury lifestyle and successful real estate business, forced a complete reevaluation of assumptions about success, intelligence, and family dynamics that had shaped relationships for years. Victoria's recognition that she had consistently underestimated and criticized someone whose achievements significantly exceeded her own created a moment of reckoning that was both humbling and enlightening. Maya's explanation of her investment philosophy and wealth-building strategies provided Victoria with insights into alternative approaches to financial success that challenged her beliefs about the relationship between income, lifestyle, and long-term security. Maya's focus on building assets rather than maintaining expensive appearances had enabled her to achieve financial independence at an age when most people were still accumulating debt and struggling to establish career stability. The discussion of Maya's financial situation naturally led to questions about her decision to maintain secrecy about her success and the impact this choice had on family relationships and perceptions. Maya explained that her preference for privacy had been motivated by a desire to maintain authentic relationships based on personal qualities rather than financial status, but she acknowledged that the strategy had contributed to misunderstandings and tensions that might have been avoided through greater openness. Victoria's processing of these revelations required her to confront not only her misjudgments about Maya, but also her own insecurities and assumptions about wealth, success, and family dynamics. The recognition that she had been patronizing and criticizing someone whose achievements significantly exceeded her own forced Victoria to examine the motivations behind her behavior and the impact it had on family relationships. The experience was both humbling and educational in ways that prompted genuine personal growth. The immediate practical implications of Maya's financial revelation included her ability to provide substantial assistance with Robert's business crisis while the couple dealt with his health recovery and their own car troubles. Maya's offer to provide temporary funding, professional analysis, and ongoing support during the transition period addressed both the financial and strategic challenges that had seemed overwhelming just hours earlier. Maya's decision to reveal her wealth and expertise to Victoria also opened discussions about her broader financial activities and philanthropic commitments that had been invisible to the family. Victoria learned about the scholarship programs Maya funded, the nonprofit organizations she supported, and the social impact investing she pursued as expressions of her values and commitment to using wealth for positive social change. The transformation in Victoria's understanding of Maya extended beyond recognition of her financial success to appreciation of the thoughtfulness and intentionality behind her life choices. Maya's modest lifestyle was revealed as a sophisticated strategy for maintaining authenticity and maximizing social impact rather than evidence of limited ambition or capability. Victoria began to understand that Maya's approach to wealth and success reflected values and priorities that were both admirable and effective. Victoria's emotional response to these revelations included shame about her treatment of Maya, gratitude for her niece's willingness to help during the crisis, and amazement at the depth of her misjudgments about someone she had known since childhood. The experience forced Victoria to recognize how she had been patronizing and criticizing someone whose achievements exceeded her own, created a moment of reckoning that was both humbling and enlightening. The practical outcomes of Maya's assistance with Robert's business crisis exceeded everyone's expectations and demonstrated the value of her strategic thinking and financial expertise. Her analysis identified opportunities for improving the profitability and reducing the risks of several pending transactions, while her temporary funding allowed Robert to negotiate from a position of strength rather than desperation. The resolution of the crisis actually left Robert's business in a stronger position than before his hospitalization. Robert's reaction to learning about Maya's business expertise and financial assistance was gratitude, mixed with embarrassment about his previous condescending attitude toward her career choices and lifestyle. Like Victoria, he was forced to confront his assumptions about success and recognize that his niece had achieved financial independence and professional reputation that exceeded his accomplishments, despite her deliberately modest public presentation. The impact of Maya's revelations extended beyond the immediate crisis to prompt broader family discussions about success, values, and relationships that had been needed for years. Maya's parents were amazed to learn about their daughter's achievements and felt proud but also somewhat guilty about their failure to recognize and support her accomplishments. Emma's response combined excitement about her sister's success with reflection about her own priorities and life choices. The family's collective processing of Maya's revelations prompted conversations about the different ways success could be defined and achieved, the relationship between lifestyle choices and financial capability, and the importance of authentic communication in family relationship.
Maya's example challenged everyone to reconsider their assumptions about wealth, happiness, and the trade-offs involved in different approaches to career and life planning. Victoria's transformation from critic to advocate for Maya's approach to life and career represented genuine personal growth that extended beyond the immediate crisis situation. She began questioning her own lifestyle choices and the social pressures that had influenced her priorities, recognizing that her emphasis on appearance and status had sometimes created stress and anxiety rather than genuine satisfaction and security. The resolution of Robert's business crisis and his successful recovery from the cardiac episode provided opportunities for the extended family to rebuild relationships on more authentic foundations. Family gatherings became more genuine and supportive, with less emphasis on competitive displays of wealth and more focus on personal interests, values, and mutual support during challenges and celebrations. Maya's decision to be more open about her financial situation and professional accomplishments created space for other family members to share their own struggles and uncertainties without fear of judgment or unwanted advice. The pretenses and assumptions that had created distance between family members were replaced by honest communication and genuine appreciation for different approaches to success and fulfillment. The Honda Civic that had been a source of family tension for years became a symbol of Maya's wisdom and authentic values, rather than evidence of limited success or poor judgment. Victoria's newfound appreciation for the car's reliability and practicality reflected her broader understanding of the advantages of prioritizing substance over appearance in various aspects of life and financial planning. Victoria's relationship with Maya evolved into genuine friendship and mutual respect that enriched both women's lives in unexpected ways.
Victoria became one of Maya's strongest supporters and advocates within the family, while Maya provided Victoria with perspectives on wealth and success that helped her find greater satisfaction and authenticity in her own lifestyle choices. The crisis that had initially threatened to expose family divisions and inadequacies ultimately strengthened relationships and created opportunities for growth and understanding that might not have occurred under normal circumstances. Maya's willingness to help during the emergency, combined with her family's openness to recognizing their misjudgments, created a foundation for more supportive and authentic relationships going forward. Maya's example influenced other family members to reconsider their own approaches to career, money, and lifestyle choices. Emma began exploring more meaningful work opportunities that aligned with her values, rather than simply maximizing income and status. Maya's parents started volunteering with organizations that supported educational opportunities for disadvantaged students, inspired by their daughter's philanthropic commitments. The long-term impact of the revelations extended beyond immediate family relationships to influence how Maya approached her professional work and personal life. Her increased openness about her success enabled her to take on more visible projects and leadership roles in organizations that were working to address social and environmental challenges. Her expertise became more widely recognized and utilized for causes she cared about. Victoria's transformation from Maya's harshest critic to her strongest supporter within the family represented a complete reversal that surprised everyone who knew their history. Victoria began actively promoting Maya's consulting services to her own social and business networks, leading to new opportunities and professional relationships that enhanced Maya's impact and influence. The family's collective learning from the crisis included recognition of the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to understand people's true capabilities and motivations. Maya's example demonstrated that success could be defined and achieved in multiple ways, and that authentic relationships required honest communication and willingness to challenge assumptions about others' choices and circumstances. Maya's story became a source of inspiration and reflection for extended family members and friends who learned about her approach to wealth building, career development, and authentic living. Her example provided practical lessons about financial planning and strategic thinking, while also offering insights into the relationship between values, lifestyle choices, and genuine fulfillment. The resolution of the crisis marked the beginning of a new chapter in family relationships characterized by greater honesty, mutual respect, and support for individual choices and values. Maya's willingness to reveal her success when it could help others, combined with her family's ability to recognize and acknowledge their misjudgments, created a foundation for stronger and more authentic connections going forward. Victoria's journey from judgmental critic to supportive advocate represented personal growth that enhanced her own life satisfaction while improving her relationships with all family members. Her recognition that wealth and status were not adequate measures of worth or happiness led to positive changes in her own priorities and approach to social relationships. Maya's decision to maintain her modest lifestyle even after revealing her wealth demonstrated that her choices had been based on genuine values rather than financial constraints. Her continued commitment to practicality, authenticity, and social responsibility provided ongoing examples for family members who were reconsidering their own approaches to success and lifestyle choices. The Honda Civic continued to serve as Maya's primary transportation, but its meaning within the family had been completely transformed. What had once been seen as evidence of failure or poor judgment was now recognized as a symbol of wisdom, authenticity, and strategic thinking that had enabled Maya to build substantial wealth while maintaining her values and contributing positively to her community. The family's understanding of success expanded to include Maya's definitions involving financial independence, social impact, and authentic living, alongside more traditional measures of achievement. This broader perspective created space for family members to pursue diverse paths without judgment and to support each other's choices, even when they differed from conventional expectations. Maya's influence on family dynamics extended beyond immediate relatives to affect how the family engaged with their broader community and social networks. Victoria's changed perspective led her to become more supportive of charitable causes and less focused on competitive social positioning. The family's collective approach to wealth and success became more thoughtful and values-driven. The lasting impact of Maya's revelations included inspiration for family members to pursue their own forms of meaningful success and to prioritize authenticity over appearance in their personal and professional lives. Maya's example provided both practical strategies for financial planning and philosophical insights into the relationship between values, lifestyle choices, and genuine fulfillment that influenced family decisions for years to come. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.